Hey everybody, SuspectSky team here. We're joined with Gary, and we have a bit of a public service announcement to you regarding the informed delivery program of the United States Postal Service. I have not heard of this, ever. It's been around for about 2 years, and in the last few weeks, since about Thanksgiving, November 2018, it's been getting some attention online. And Gary and I did a nice deep dive, and what we realized about it was a little bit concerning, and we wanted to share it with you quickly, get some information to you so that you can protect yourself, as well as just discuss a little bit about what this program is, why it's concerning, and a few other elements related to it. So the Informed Delivery Program is a United States Postal Service project or program whereby they scan your mail for you and provide electronic copies of that information into a system that you can opt into and view this mail remotely. So you have copies of your mail stored online by the government, the USPS, that you are now enabled to access digitally and see what has come in and review a little bit about what mail that you've received. Now, there's a big concern here, and we're going to take a quick deep dive here. So what you're looking at is the Federal Register from December 9th, 2016, which apparently has enabled the government to enact this program. We're going to talk a little bit about the issues with the Federal Register and the process by which these types of projects are approved and then commissioned to take place. But firstly, we're going to break down this video into 3 components. The first is our issue with the government. The second is the issue with your basic criminal element that might be able to take advantage of such a program. And we're going to suggest at the end of the video a few techniques to protect yourself. And then thirdly, how the courtocracy might be able to take advantage of this program. So first, I'd like to say right off the bat that this is not a program that you opt into. This is a program that they are doing anyway, so they are scanning and digitally storing your mail anyway, but there is a component that should you decide to opt into the program, you as the resident or you as the normal citizen is able to view the electronic versions of your mail as they are recorded by the USPS. Gary, is there anything you'd like to add right now?
Maybe I'm late to the party or something, but I had never heard of this. And I was just digging around on Postal Service website this time of year. People send presents in the mail and so forth and check for tracking and the normal things that people do. And I just happened to fall into this. It's like kind of an obscure feature that I'd never heard of. And I don't remember any marketings from USPS talking about it or anything like that. So it kind of led me down the rabbit hole to the Federal Register, which lays it all out.
Yeah, so I have to agree that I have never been informed about this program either. Unlike a lot of USPS projects or marketing initiatives, they typically are quite good at delivering communications to you, typically via mail, about new projects or new services that they're offering. Usually you get a little card in the mail that says, hey, we now offer, P.O. boxes or something at this new location. This was something that seemed to be a little bit under the radar, and I personally believe that this was an intentional obfuscation of this program. Looking back at the Federal Register is a way in which new government programs can be established by a process known as implied consent. And the idea is, well, we're going to post the details of this project or this new service that we're going to do in this thing called a Federal Register. And unless we get commentary back that makes us decide that this is somehow unconstitutional, unless we get sufficient citizen outcry or backlash, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. And this Federal Register here from 2016, you can see some of the outcries, some of the backlash, and some of the questions involve things such as who are the third parties that we're sharing the information with? How long is this information contained within the government record? And Gary, I think you would agree that the answers that the government was providing was not clear, or at least a little bit tangential. You maybe want to expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, I thought that some of it was a little vague, that at no point do they actually address some of the concerns about, basically, bottom line, is the government going to snoop on what mail is coming to my mailbox? So they kind of bounce around those types of questions. The one thing I did notice is they start getting complex, which the Federal Register will make your eyes cross anyway. So when you start getting complex about breaking it down into 8 different types and groups of mail and all this stuff, and they treat each one differently. But the takeaway I got from it was that they keep a record of this for, interestingly, was 2 years and 11 months. I have no idea, other than perhaps there's something tied into a statute of limitations, 3 years or something, but why they picked that crazy number, 2 years and 11 months. It also talks about a data aggregation, and this leads us into the corporate aspect of this. But most importantly, there's a big security issue that Adrian will discuss here.
This made me think, when I first saw this, it made me think a few things. First off the bat is this concept of implied consent. So who reads the Federal Register, right? A few people, I guess, maybe 10 questions were asked out of the entire country. And based off of essentially their view that these were properly answered questions, this is a proper program we've now instituted. And boy, does that make me think of things like 5G, things like geoengineering, solar radiation management, this concept of unless you complain or find some kind of constitutional issue with the government's program, we're just going to do it anyway. And then, who reads these things? Nobody. So it's implied consent, but it really shouldn't be because the population isn't informed well enough about where to find this information, how to dissent against it. And as we've talked a lot about on our channel, is that there is this series or network of programs being conducted by the government that are operating assuming that you consent to it. But did you really consent to it if you never even knew about it or were never educated to find out how to learn about these programs and then provide your dissent? Gary, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's important to try to help folks understand the ramifications of all this. For example, this compares pretty directly to legal notices in your local newspapers, in your newspapers of record. For example, let's say you have a spouse that's disappeared and you want to divorce that person. You have to post in at least 2 newspapers in the legal section of your intent to do so. And then after a certain amount of time, it's considered public notice. And if the person didn't see it, too bad. They've gotten their notification whether they saw it or not.
Right. It's kind of a sneaky way to get your consent to do something. And before we move on to the next issue with this program, I'd like to summarize a few of the issues that we've identified with this. One, it was kind of sneakily done through a Federal Register program. 2, it's not being promoted, so very few people know that this is happening. And what is happening is that their mail is being electronically scanned and stored by the government. And 3, for the government to have access to this information, it likely is now being distributed to organizations such as the CIA, other intelligence operations, other political organizations, and as we'll see in a minute, courtocracy-based elements. And all this information can be used in a very similar fashion as we found with what is happening with social media and the concept of social engineering. So in platforms such as Facebook and whatnot, what they're capable of doing is extracting your preferences, your psychology, who you are as a person, and they're able to manipulate you. For example, you've ever noticed if you're liberal or conservative leaning, you will see information posted on these social media sites that tend to reinforce your beliefs and also might be exploited by either political parties or other government institutions. And this, to me, appears as a way to capture those individuals who do not regularly use social media or other types of these social engineering platforms. This is now a way to bring in simple snail mail, right? Your basic print mail into the fold. Gary, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just mind-boggling. The more I think about it, the more I look into it, is they literally... Now, I want to clarify something. They're not opening your mail. But what they are doing is making an image of the front of each envelope. They're also tracking the packages that come, and with related to vulnerabilities, we'll talk about that too. The trick of this is they're doing this whether you sign up for the service or not.
Great points. And I should clarify, they are not opening your mail and scanning it, but they are scanning the front of the envelope. And that could be used, I think, in sort of big data analytics to be able to determine who you are as a person, perhaps even integrate it with who you are as a person online, and be able to affect your opinions, your political beliefs and whatnot through a series of either print mailings or what is presented to you online. So that's what I see as the big threat from a government perspective. The other threat that we've identified, and there are a number of links that we're going to share here, is the idea of what could base criminals do with this information. So they could steal your account of the informed delivery service. Gary, you mentioned to me a little bit before pre-show that they're really not asking that many questions of who you are as a person. You just need to know things like your address, your name, and whatnot. And these could be used for identity theft. The other big thing, in addition to this, the Secret Service has warned the population about such scams to commit identity theft. But the other thing is the United States Postal Service, which is gathering all of this, has actually been hacked in the past. And all of this information, all of your mail has been exploited and is now capable of being used for identity theft as well. So as this article indicates, about 60 million people were part of a hack of the United States Postal Service in which their information has been stolen. Hackers, other criminals, they know what type of mail you get, they know what credit cards you have, and they could likely exploit that information as well. So to sum up, there are two ways that sort of base criminals can take advantage of this program. They can either pretend to be you and steal your identity, or they could be part of a larger hack, which in November 23rd, 2018, they were. The USPS was hacked, and all of this information was stolen for 60 million plus users. These criminals now know who you are, where you live, and what type of mail you get. Gary, is there anything you'd like to add on this topic?
It's really important to understand that if you are someone who receives a monthly check in the mail, that if someone has hacked your account, they'll see when that check is coming to the mailbox, because you get an email every day, any day that your mail will be delivered to you, you get an email that has the image of the envelope that will be delivered that day. So if you're a crook and want to steal checks, you can go around and pull those checks after the mail is delivered. And also the packages, especially around Christmas, that's why we thought this was a really important topic right now, is you're receiving Christmas presents. If someone has hacked your account, they will see the boxes that are coming from Amazon or coming from maybe from eBay or some other corporate provider. And they can just come by and pull your packages right off your porch. Now, there are some benefits to this, certainly. I mean, it's kind of nice to know that if you're on vacation and something's being delivered to your mailbox, you can call your neighbor or friend or family member, whatever, could you go by and pick that up for me today? No doubt there is a benefit that way, but the vulnerabilities are severe.
I would agree as well. And also, I think you listening to this broadcast that you would want to think about, is that benefit worth the risk of giving up your essentially psychological profile, in my opinion? So if you can collate all the different pieces of mail that you receive, is it possible that the government can collate and create a profile of yourself and then therefore manipulate you in some way, either through direct mail or either through some integration with the social engineering platforms such as Facebook? That risk, as well as the risk of could criminals or hackers take advantage of the fact that your mail is now being scanned and stored electronically. And bringing us our third and final point of this presentation deals with sort of the courtocracy's ability to take advantage of this information. So we found an interesting article here called "The Tips for Leveraging This New Informed Delivery Service." And everything in this article is not nefarious. There might be a way to help marketers and things like that be able to leverage the data that is now being collected by the government for marketing purposes. But what we did find a little bit interesting was the relationship of this company called Top Printing to its parent company, RBD. Gary, do you maybe want to share a little bit about what you discovered when you investigated this parent company?
Well, it's a large $6 billion in revenues. It's a big concern. It's a big holding company. It has all kinds of connections with investments, with Wall Street, with marketing, with communications. It's just interesting that they're singing the praises of this. And one of the things that I saw, it listed, to date, U.S. Postal Service says about 8.89 million accounts have been created. If we looked a minute ago, we saw where 60 million at least accounts were hacked. So that's taking us in the direction of one of the remedies that we have for this. I'm getting ahead of myself. But you have a lot of people were hacked and didn't even have an account, but their information was taken anyway. This organization, because of its connections and so forth, of course, they're going to be all positive about the potential for business, and information aggregation is huge with this. Imagine for a moment, just getting back to the government side. Yeah, let's say you're an NRA member. Every month you get a magazine. Does that not profile you, the type of politics that you probably have? On the other side of it, if you're a member of some Marxist organization, you probably get mailings, and that identifies you that way too. So there's a whole lot of trouble with this going on.
Absolutely. And I just want to quickly correct myself. I said RBD company. It's actually RRD company. So if you do a corporate registration search for it, you'll see that it's an RRD, which translates to Richard Donnelly Company. One thing you mentioned was a boutique company backed by major resources. I found this bizarre, and I know you did too, Gary. What do you think's going on here?
I don't know. When you start talking about major resources, I can't think of a more major resource than the deep pockets of the U.S. government. That's kind of almost a code word to me that, yeah, we got deep pockets.
I agree. It's a bizarre marketing terminology to use, so this was a little strange. Now, this claims to be just a simple printing company, and they're going to help you get your message out, but they also seem to be deeply involved in this program by the USPS, just something to keep in mind. And they also, when you look up RRD Company, if you look up its registration, they're actually deeply involved with this technology called the Edgar database, which is related to the Securities Exchange Commission. And this immediately made me think of, boy, what could a corptocracy institution, how could they take advantage of knowing your psychological profile based off of scanned and analyzed images of the mail that you receive? And I thought of two situations here. The first is they could take advantage of you from a marketing perspective. So they could influence you in a way to purchase consumables that perhaps you didn't need, or perhaps just otherwise take advantage of your purchasing patterns. But I also thought, and this was, I think, more the nefarious component, was could this company take advantage of market fluctuations to earn profits based off of some huge big data analysis of the purchasing patterns based off of the mail received to millions of citizens? Could they take advantage and earn a profit based off of a predictive analysis of your purchasing patterns based off of your mail? And perhaps that is also as well integrated with your social media preferences and the things that you look on online. So the parent company of this print marketing company called Top Printing, the parent company of Top Printing actually owns this Edgar database company, which is involved with the Securities Exchange Commission. And I personally see some vulnerability here, some exploitation capability here. Gary, do you have anything else to add on this one?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
Sure. And in addition to their connections with the Securities Exchange Commission, the quote, free market, I wanted to highlight, there's also this technology called pixel marketing. I'm going to include this link. Pixel marketing is the idea of when you visit a website that you then see advertisements on other websites for a previously visited website. And what I immediately thought of when Gary shared this program that is happening at the USPS, this kind of seems to me like an effort to extend pixel marketing into the print delivery service. Again, there is a lot of vulnerabilities here, ranging from government abuse to basic criminal abuse, as well as corptocracy abuse. As Gary mentioned, these criminals could simply look up your account, steal your identity, as well as maybe even just know when a package is going to be delivered to your house and just pick it up off your porch. So we wanted to get this information out fast to you. And Gary, you had thought of a few ways to protect yourself, although there's really not much we can do, right? Do you maybe want to share a little bit about protections that our audience might be able to take against this type of technology?
It's important foreknowledge is forearmed. Now know about this. So what can you do about it? The train has already left the station with respect to the implementation of the service. So there's nothing you can do with that. The time period passed, no comment was made, so forth, so on. You have no standing based on that. But Probably the smartest thing that one can do is to go ahead, sign up, make an account. That way it locks down your subscription so no one else can come in to an unattended profile and attach to it. Now, you can lock down your system. Doesn't mean you got to open email. You get email every day, every day that you're receiving something. Don't have to open it. You can if you like. I have some samples of what that email looks like. You can all see for yourself. If you do decide to sign up for it, that's what one will look like. That's obviously a redacted piece of mail, but that's what it looks like in emails, image of the front. You can see that something's right behind it. So this is just a process that goes on all the time. Everything is scanned. I can't even imagine the technological resources required to store all this data. But that being said, the best remedy is to sign up. And I don't know what else to tell you because it's a done deal.
And I also might add, Gary, is that you're not consenting to this process happening, to this program happening. This is already happening to you. You signing up is simply a defensive measure against somebody taking advantage of that and perhaps trying to steal your identity, right?
Right. And if you look at going back to the Federal Register, the way you opt out, you have to sign up, then you can cancel your service, but you're not canceling the process. That's absolutely critical to understand. You can't opt out of it because that train has left the station. You opted in by default because there was no comment issued.
There's that now implied consent that so many of these nefarious government programs get pushed through without anybody knowing about. This is the concept of implied consent. Your mail, your envelopes are being electronically scanned and stored by the USPS right now. It's been happening for 2 years and nobody knew about it until November 23rd, 2018, when a hack occurred and a whole bunch of news came out about it. But Gary and I and the rest of the team felt it was important to bring this to your all attention, to make you aware that this was happening, and to perhaps either sign up for an account to protect yourself from identity theft. Also, to just be a little bit aware of how these projects happen. They happen under the radar. You don't even know they're happening. And perhaps to be a little bit more cognizant of when these types of projects happen. And perhaps if you're one of these amazing people that actually watches things like the Federal Register to provide commentary against such programs, I would say that to sum up, the government can use the information about your mailings to create a profile of you like they do with social media. Now they can do it with print mail. Secondly, basic criminals and hackers can now take advantage of this information that's being stored by the USPS, and they have done this in the past. We saw that there was an article here that has 60 million users' accounts, and again, these are millions of users who did not opt into this program. They just happened to fall into it because of the way that the project works. So there's this vulnerability, as well as the advantage of kleptocracy institutions, whether it's companies like RRD using the Edgar database to take arbitrage opportunities to earn more money, more profit by profiling your purchasing power. And does that seem really fair to you? I don't think so. So this is a little bit of a different type of discussion. This is kind of what Carrie and I have been calling a flash report or a special edition or something. But we felt that, especially within the holiday season, that this was a very worthwhile and a very important message to get out. So as always, we appreciate you listening. Gary, I appreciate your insight and for doing a deep dive into this. And as usual, we're living in some interesting times. Every week and now every day, it seems like there are new things coming out that we're investigating and finding out that are important to a free society. And we will see you all again next time. Thanks for listening.